If we're going to see this nation reclaimed for Christ and our communities transformed by the power of the gospel, it's the job of each and every Christian to live as witnesses for Jesus Christ. What does it look like to apply salt and light in your community? In Oklahoma City, former District Attorney Wes Lane has founded Salt and Light Leadership Training.
SALT was born out of the concept that we serve the God of the impossible, and how could we change a city as leaders? What is God willing to do through me? So let me just give you an example. It's Tim Ulrich. He's a guy living in California. He buys a building as an investment and finds out that it is a crack house. And so his solution to this building in the inner city of Oklahoma City is not to just sell it or divest himself, it's to move his family into it and to start transforming it by his presence and bringing, as he would say, bringing neighbor to the hood.
This is The Refuge, Oklahoma City.
It's an old apartment complex that used to be one of the larger crack house and prostitution rings. This place where we're sitting right now was at one point 60% of the 911 calls for the inner city. During the narcotics drug raid, they had pulled 2 of Oklahoma's most wanted out of here. This was kind of a war zone, I guess you could say. Today, you're in a building which is actually being used as the warehouse now. But upstairs, you'd find 22 apartment units that are being used for missionaries who have intentionally moved into the neighborhood to be a part of the neighborhood.
I'm here because I want to see city transformation happen. We serve our business owners that live next to us just as much as we serve the homeless people. We believe in serving whoever you live next to, and we want to see city transformation happen through that.
There's about 50 of us now living in community.
There's not one person that is outside of God's grace. God can reach anybody. So when I look at it from that perspective, there's always hope.
This neighborhood has gone from ruins to restoration.
So now what you see several years later is that area in that community is being redeemed to the glory of God, not pushing out the people that are living there, but pushing back the darkness of that community there. It's more the sprinkling of salt into a community, changing the flavor of things, redeeming a community, and watching as that spread, as in service and in love, they just start transforming a whole community. So Tim is a great example of that.
As we see in Oklahoma City, as is happening in communities across America, Christians are recapturing the original mission that ignited the transformation of the entire world during the earliest centuries of the church. It's Christians digging in where they're at, combining God's gifts and calling along with the opportunities that He's put directly in front of them to love their neighbors as themselves in often difficult circumstances. God's call to love our neighbors is bearing fruit as more and more Christians are connecting their passions and abilities with God's call on their lives.
God has placed people in every city who are there. They may not even realize it, but they are called to solve a problem. And with the calling comes the power of God to do that if they will step up. Everybody has a role to play in that. And so we're seeing that, like for instance in foster care right now. So what does that look like? Well, you see people like Ben Knuckles. God has really placed a heart in him for foster children.
Kids come into foster care for 3 reasons: abuse, neglect, and abandonment. We're trying to recruit families so that kids don't have to spend a single night in a shelter.
When I got into a shelter, I would pray and pray and pray. And then I just lost hope. I was just like, okay, well, maybe it's not real, you know? And when I came here, He revealed Himself and was just like, I'm real, I'm here. I just been waiting for you to actually accept me.
God's done it. I couldn't have imagined a more beautiful family than what He's given us.
Foster care is woven in to the fabric of their marriage and their new blended family. And so they've fostered over and over again over the last number of years.
Without God, with all that's going on, we'd be in a mess.
When you take steps of obedience, it unlocks provision, blessing, guidance, wisdom, and everything that you need to do what God calls you to do.
They're not choosing us, we're choosing them. And in so doing, we're embodying, demonstrating, and proclaiming the gospel. Laying your life down for somebody else actually does cost you something.
Mia had been abandoned. She was only a few days old. She had been born early, premature, with a heart condition that required her to have a heart transplant, but they couldn't find a foster home.
And without a home, she would not be eligible to receive a heart. So they moved her to a children's facility and put her on morphine to pass away.
We took that leap of faith and brought her into her home and were obedient and scared to death and ended up getting a heart transplant, and now she's the mighty Mia. She is all go. And we have 2 biological kids, we have 2 adopted kids, and we have anywhere from 1 to 2, sometimes 3 foster kids in our home at a time.
We know that God's called us to this. We know that He's going to provide, and it's going to honor Him and glorify Him.
There's no problem that's too great for God. The faithful presence of the body of Christ has the power to transform the world. Some of the most radical transformations in the history of the world have come as a result of God's people themselves having been liberated from the bondage of sin and filled with the love of Christ, follow Christ, and pouring themselves out for and sacrificing themselves for others. So how will we answer the call?
Are doers coming together, applying a biblical worldview to change the culture of a community in a redemptive fashion for the glory of God.
God has designed each of us for His purposes. He's designed the world around us, and He's given us His truth about that design. Imagine if the God of the impossible were to use you and me, each one of us, to transform our communities to His glory.
That's what a city of salt and light looks like to me. When the Christians show up, everything should change. All people should benefit because we have brought our worldview